Once the last zone was captured, Shiro nodded in satisfaction before checking how much time was left. With just a few hours left, she had an idea, but it could potentially be a little risky. She wanted to go talk to Cyrodiil since it was the perfect chance. Cyrodiil couldn't leave the zone since she was the lifeline, so even if negotiations go south, she could escape whenever she wanted. She wasn't sure what kind of skill that she may have which could track, so sending an avatar would also be good. Her main goal was just to talk to her, so that she could get some information about what she knows about the system. Thinking about this, Shiro teleported next to Nantion and sat down. I'll be sending an avatar to Cyrodiil so that I could try having a talk with her. I'll leave the job of keeping an eye on the zones to you, Shiro said as Nantion nodded his head. Sure, good luck. He smiled. Giving him a thumbs up, Shiro created an avatar and assumed control before teleporting away. #####. Leaving her zone, Shiro looked into the distance and spotted Cyrodiil's zone. While on the way there, she decided to note out her questions so that it was easier to ask as much as she wanted. I want to know what she knows in terms of information that only empresses get to know. Since it shouldn't be censored for her, she should be able to hear it if I say it. I also should ask her about what happens in the second half, like how to win and such since she's been through a few gardens now. Shiro thought to herself. Stomping down, she increased her speed as she suddenly felt a pair of eyes on her. Noticing that it belonged to Cyrodiil, she curved her lips into a smile. I suppose I should be looking forward to a small welcoming ceremony, Shiro muttered with a smile. Landing just outside of the zone, she watched as the barrier opened slightly so that she could enter without needing to force her way in. As she was walking through the zone, she couldn't help but raise her eyebrow since it was completely silent. Not a single person could be sensed. Previously, she had figured that Cyrodiil probably hid them with something, but no. It was true that she was here, and she was alone. Where are her subjects? Her allies? Shouldn't a queen be able to bring them over from previous gardens? Shiro thought to herself, but continued to walk towards the ominous aura in the center of the zone. Navigating through the corridors, she pushed past the giant set of doors and saw Cyrodiil sitting on a throne with her legs crossed and her head leaning on her hand. I was planning to look for you after this event is over, but I didn't expect you to look for me instead. Cyrodiil smirked as she narrowed her eyes just to make sure that this was not some disguise. What can I say? There's only a few hours left of this event, and I figured that this was the perfect moment to ask you a few questions. Hopefully, you'll be able to answer some of them for me. Shiro smiled. Depends on the type of question, but I don't mind answering a few since I have some of my own. As you are the guest here, I'll let you have the first question. Ask away. Cyrodiil gestured for Shiro to sit down as a table and throne appeared before her. Seeing that she was being treated as an equal, Shiro nodded her head and sat down. My first question is, what knowledge do you have about the system that the other queens don't? I heard from someone that all empresses know something that queens don't, so I'm curious as to what you know. Shiro questioned as Cyrodiil tapped the table with her finger. I know quite a bit. While I am one of the younger empresses, I do have my fair share of knowledge. Anything specific that you're looking for, or are you just asking me about everything I know? Taking a deep breath, Shiro looked at her with a serious expression. Do you know about the truth of this new age? How it's the last cycle, and everything will end if I don't win this? Shiro said as Cyrodiil sat up in shock since she didn't expect Shiro to already know about this. Judging from your expression, I suppose my words weren't censored. I found out that the system has been spouting complete bullsh** to the queens. I'm not sure about the other empresses, but none of them know that once you fail in your garden, your chance is already over. Only the queen originating from this garden gets a chance to win this new age. I'm surprised that you have discovered this, considering how long it took me to find out. And yes, you are right. This is the last cycle, and if you die, everything falls apart and will be destroyed along with everything else in this world. However, during my time here, I've noticed something rather curious. Cyrodiil smiled. This garden can give birth to more than one queen. Previously, whenever there was a demon king or queen, they were cultivated in their own domain. And yet, a demon queen was born in this garden, which means there are two potential candidates to choose from. However, that's not the end. I've also discovered that there is a potential for more queens to appear should they grasp onto something that they can rule over which no one else has ruled over before. There are a lot of anomalies in this world, and it seems like you don't have to be the final victor anymore. Cyrodiil smiled darkly as Shiro felt her body tense up from what seems to be her skill. But I will say that right now, I have a rather good impression of you. Before I give more information, I'll ask my question now. How did you get to space, and how damaged is the barrier? Do you know the consequences of you creating holes in this barrier? Cyrodiil asked, since Shiro could probably get a better look at the barrier from space. She wanted to see if Shiro knew why it was put there in the first place. I know that there is a barrier. In terms of damage, so far it's just the consequences of the first event where I fired my most powerful attack I could muster in order to destroy the relic. As for the repercussions of shooting through this barrier, I do not know for sure. Shiro shook her head. You see, the barrier is placed there for a reason. There will be an invasion from space, an army led by a powerful deity that will descend on this garden like it has done several times in the past. I've seen the outcome and the destruction brought to the garden whenever this happened, and I'll say that without the barrier that was specifically designed to stop them, this garden will be destroyed before the second half even arrives. Cyrodiil warned as Shiro furrowed her brows. Would it perhaps be due to a dungeon break of a place called the Gates of Rokarn? I found this dungeon/raid on the surface of the moon, and it did not seem like good news. I have asked a few gods, and it turns out that Rokarn is quite the powerful fellow. Quite is an understatement. He single-handedly wiped out 3 empress who charged forth in the battle in one of the earlier gardens. But enough about that. I have a small proposition for you. Since you know about all of this, I will spare the small talk and ask you directly. How do you feel about forming a temporary alliance for now? If we can end Rokarn's army early, this garden will be in a better spot when the second half arrives. Cyrodiil asked as Shiro raised an eyebrow. For now, yes. I've placed my hopes in plenty of queens and empresses in the previous gardens. Since this is the last cycle, I don't really care anymore. If this garden can survive, great. If not, then, oh well. Whether or not we keep this alliance can be discussed later, but I have my own grudges against Rokarn, so I don't mind seeing him seething in anger as we kill him while he's weak. Cyrodiil shrugged, understanding that this was Cyrodiil evaluating her strength along with the strength of her allies. Shiro nodded her head. All right, what do you think we'll need in order for us to clear this raid then? Shiro asked. Minimum of level 900. Interesting. How many would we need? Because I happen to know 2 level 900 beings, one of which is on friendly terms with me, and while I and a few others may not be level 900, I've attained demigod state, and they're in pseudo-demigod state. Shiro smiled as Cyrodiil raised an eyebrow. Watching Shiro summon divine energy around her, Cyrodiil's eyes flickered for a moment before smiling. This should be plenty, though I do have an idea of what we can do to raise their levels up a little before this raid. And what might that be? Shiro asked curiously as Cyrodiil smiled. It isn't a dungeon, but I found a gathering of level 800 monsters in the sea. It's going to be a bit annoying to fight them, but with what you have shown, it should be no problem. There are also a few forbidden zones that have high-level monsters and portals to places that can help you train. As for where they are, I don't have a map, so I can only tell you the rough location using muscle memory. Cyrodiil apologized as Shiro shook her head. It's fine. Though speaking of maps, I have another question. Do you happen to know something called the Beyond? Shiro asked curiously. Furrowing her brows, Cyrodiil nodded her head. A little. I'm not sure where you heard of it, but it's a special realm that is full of mana. If you think of this world right now as Layer 1, the Beyond is Layer 2 where all of the mana is being filtered through. Normally, getting to the realm of the Beyond is extremely difficult since there are only a few openings. But I'm guessing when you pierce through several dimensions with your attack during the first event, you pierced through the Beyond as well and destroyed a portion of it. While the makeshift entrance is probably sealed off, the barrier there will be weaker. Cyrodiil explained as Shiro leaned back. But that place is lethal to anything above Tier 3. Speaking of which, do you happen to know why that is? Shiro asked, but Cyrodiil shook her head. I don't know. However, it's not exactly safe for Tier 3 and below either. There are plants there that mutated after your attack, which caused the collapse of a few dimensions in that area. They are now more resilient than ever and highly aggressive as well. They're not something that a Tier 6 can handle even outside of that area. But with the environment now, you'll be dreaming if you actually wanted to fight them. But I will say one thing. If you happen to enter the Beyond, make the most out of it. Since your level gain in that realm is increased, the residents there are powerful and resistant to mana. Similar to the Storm Leviathan under Theria's control, using mana against them is a no-go since they'll just get stronger. Cyrodiil said as Shiro coughed. Actually, one of the level 900 beings that I mentioned is Revel, the Storm Leviathan that was under Theria's control. I've broken contract with her, and he's healing the wounds to his soul right now. Hearing this, Cyrodiil paused in surprise and stared at her. You broke the system's contract which rewarded Theria with the monster? Yup, It was a bit annoying, but thanks to my knowledge of the runes used by gods, it's possible. Shiro smiled as Cyrodiil chuckled. You surprise me more and more. Though that does make me curious, what do your subordinates think about this meeting? I'm sure the spirits aren't too happy to see their ruler conversing with someone that tortured their previous ruler to death. Cyrodiil asked as she rested her chin on her palm. Well, they have their own thoughts about it. Care to tell me why you did it, though? Might make cooperation a little easier. Shiro asked. I was bored and she helped one of the queens that launched an attack on me while we were waiting for the new age to begin. So as a result, I eliminated her as well as the other queens that participated. Most of them managed to recover and come back, but a few died for good. She was one of them. Cyrodiil shrugged as Shiro sighed. That certainly makes things more complicated. Shiro scratched her head. If you want, I can offer her an apology if we are becoming allies. I don't mind doing that. It won't do much since the previous queen is still dead. Cyrodiil shrugged. It's fine. I'll think of that later. I hope this isn't a sour topic, but I thought queens had subordinates. What happened to yours? Hearing this, Cyrodiil paused for a moment before narrowing her eyes. Contemplating for a moment, she sat back. Their deaths were unique to say the least. I do have a few allies, but I am here alone right now. Cyrodiil replied as Shiro nodded her head. Sorry for bringing it up. No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. So how do you know all of these things? You know the system's truth. You know about the beyond, and even found out about the raid where the invasion would break out from. Cyrodiil asked curiously. I'll be honest, it's complete luck. I just keep running into trouble. Shiro shrugged as the two of them talked like old friends while waiting for the event to end. So when do you want to arrange the meet-up to prepare for this raid on the dungeon? I'm not sure how long it'll take for Revel to recover, but I'll probably take more than a few weeks. Damage to the soul isn't easy to heal. Shiro asked as Cyrodiil thought about it for a moment. We can do this in 2 months. It should be enough time for me to bring my level up to, or at least close to 900, depending on what's around. But as we have discussed, I'll contact you once everything is prepared. Cyrodiil replied with a smile. The two of them agreed on an alliance for now, but Cyrodiil would be doing her own thing until the promised time, since she has to tie up some loose ends. This was fine with Shiro, so naturally, she agreed on going separate ways for now. Before you leave, though, I need to remind you. Don't break barriers that you find or pierce dimensions if possible. They're there for a reason. There has been a being who wears a raven crest and calls himself Merchant that's been contacting queens, and I'm not sure about his objective. However, he only started appearing after you pierced the dimensions, so he probably used that to escape. Be careful of him, and do not, and I mean do not, take his trade under any circumstance. It doesn't matter how desperate you are, never agree to his trade. There's something shady going on, so don't risk it. Cyrodiil warned as Shiro nodded her head. Bidding farewell with Cyrodiil, she dismissed her avatar and returned her attention back to her body. Seems like the talk went well. Nantion smiled as Shiro nodded her head, recounting the entire meeting for him. She relaxed her body and enjoyed a cup of juice while he digested the information. A path to the beyond, plant-based monsters, Raven Merchant, the raid on the moon. You have quite the schedule, huh? Nantion said as Shiro nodded her head. Yup, I have my work cut out for me. But for now, we just try to get our levels up based on where Cyrodiil told me about the location of good level up spots. Our most pressing matter is definitely the imminent invasion by Rokarn's army. If we can deal with him before he invades, it'll be good for us. We don't know what the Raven Merchant's goals are, so we can't do much about it. The journey to the beyond will definitely be hard, and it might even take longer than expected, so we'll postpone that. Plus, it'll be good to see if we can find that dragon again. He'll be helpful for the raid if he can become an ally. She shrugged while keeping an eye on the cameras that are scanning the areas near the captured zones. After her soldiers' initial demonstration of their abilities, the queens have left the area and avoided getting on their radar at all since they understood that there is no chance of them winning right now. The winner of this event was practically guaranteed to be Shiro, so there was no reason to keep risking their necks and manpower like this. They already felt a sting in their heart after seeing so many tier SIXS die during the previous free-for-all, so they weren't going to incur any more unnecessary losses. As the time ticked down, Shiro smiled once she saw the notification. The event has ended. First place, Shiro. Second place, Kiona. Third place, Cyrodiil. Since Kiona had taken the other zones that belonged to Theria previously, a majority of the points were transferred to her, which allowed her to take second place. With 2 of the top 3 being her allies, all of the rewards would benefit her in one way or another. A perfect haul. As first place, you get the best reward. The rewards are as listed. All of your lifelines that protected a zone gain a unique event title. 2 black-grade equipment. Access to special event store, 1 use. Reading the final reward, Shiro paused in surprise. She didn't expect there to be something like a store page within the system. Thinking about the potential items, she wondered what was available to be bought. Before she even looked at the event shop, she wanted to see what else she got. Unique title, Zone Guardian. Due to the special circumstances around the zones that you have conquered, the Zone Guardian title evolves into an EX title. Zone Guardian EX. When you are protecting a city belonging to the Queen, you are able to simulate a sanctuary that helps all allies. Guardian Sanctuary. When you are protecting the city, all allies in the city gain the following effects. Plus 80% lifesteal, plus 50% mana and HP siphon, plus 50% defense cleave against enemies, plus 5% health regen per second during combat near the city, plus 200% magic damage, plus 200% mana regen, plus 50% magic penetration, plus 5% of Queen's INT each second during combat. Stacks up to 50%. Seeing that this title gives a city-wide buff, Shiro couldn't help but think about how powerful a Tier 1 would get. However, the most important part of this was that it never mentioned it being limited to non-queens, which means she can get the same buff. Thinking about this, Shiro's lips curved into a smile. The next reward on the list was a pair of black-grade items. Remembering the golems that had 1005 of her strength being a black-grade item, Shiro couldn't help but wonder what kind of power they held. She didn't care about a sword or armor since she already had a rainbow-grade sword. However, if it was something that could help her friends, then she was more than willing to give it out to increase their power. Tapping accept for the 2 black-grade items, Shiro watched as 2 objects appeared on the table in front of her. The first was a crystal of sorts while the second is a single coin. Raising an eyebrow, she held the coin and inspected it. Favor of gods. You are able to summon a god that you have the favor of, bringing them to the real world at 70% strength. The system will shape the world around them so that it can contain their power should it be used before the second half. If used in the second half, the god gains a 20% boost to their strength. Blinking her eyes, Shiro didn't know what to say. If she was to use this properly, this could reverse her fate. It'll be helpful for the raid though, I want to keep it for something else if possible. Shiro thought to herself, since an item like this was helpful in many scenarios. As for the second item, unique item, Sharda, a unique item that radiates an otherworldly power, specifically requested by an administrator to be given to entity, Shiro, as a reward. Reading this, Shiro couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. The fact that this was specifically requested for her by an administrator caused her to think back to Administrator 4 who had been helping her out this whole time. Since it's something requested specifically for me and it's black grade, it's probably something important that I need to have. For now, I guess I'll keep it in my inventory. Shiro thought to herself while looking towards the final reward, the event shop. Since it was 1 use, she guessed that she can only make 1 purchase from it. It was either that or she could make multiple purchases, but only open the shop once. Narrowing her eyes, she wondered what it meant. Gaia, do you happen to know anything about the event shop? Shiro asked before she used the reward. Goddess Gaia states that she has very little knowledge about this and most of the gods here don't know either. Reading this, Shiro nodded her head. Wait, maybe Kiona knows something about this since she's won one before. Pulling out her phone, she sent Kiona a message. Shiro. Hey, do you have a moment to spare? Kiona. Yes, I do. Did you need something? Seeing that she replied quite quickly without any trouble, Shiro raised an eyebrow in surprise before typing her question. Shiro, do you happen to know anything about the event store? Kiona. Off figures. You want a ticket to open that thing. Basically, the event store is a limited store where you can buy items up to rainbow grade, but they're ridiculously expensive. Even if you win 5 events, you won't be able to afford a single one. However, you will be able to afford their black grade items. Shiro, what currency does it use? Kiona, when you win an event, you'll be rewarded with 5 credits. Second place gets 3 credits and third place gets 1 credit. That is what is used as currency. However, I suggest you keep a hold on that ticket for now until you get another one. A ticket to the shop is quite rare, and it is used up the moment you open the store. If you close it without buying anything, that's it. It'll give you a warning so you won't close it by accident. Shiro. Wait, it's used up the moment I open the store? Kiona. Yup. You can also get level 900 slaves like the one that Theria had received, but they're more expensive. She got her as a normal system reward rather than buying it from the store. Shiro. I see. Thanks for the help. Kiona. No problem. Oh, also, are you able to send me one of those computers? They seem quite interesting. Reading this, Shiro paused as she didn't expect someone like Kiona to want a computer when she had trouble with the phone. However, she won't judge. Shiro, sure. Do you need me to make a manual like I did with the phone? Kiona, no. I'll be able to handle it. Shiro, all right. I'll send over a program now. Just activate it on the phone, and it'll take some mana from you. Once you've given the phone some mana, the nanobots will make a computer for you. Sending over the program for the nanobots, Shiro bid her farewell before closing her phone. ####. Seeing Kiona's eyes sparkle, Safi understood that she must have gotten what she wanted. She had been talking about wanting a computer after becoming familiar with the phone. For the last few hours, she had been doing nothing but lay down on the sofa and playing with that phone, occasionally feeding herself. I should have just said that I don't know how to use the phone. Safi lamented as all of the work was pushed to her since Kiona was preoccupied. Suddenly, she watched as the phone broke a piece of itself off that reorganized themselves into a computer on the desk. Staring at the computer that appeared, Safi shed a silent tear. All of the work from now will probably be pushed to her, seeing as how Kiona was now on the fast lane to laziness. But she was the queen, so Safi couldn't complain. ####. With the event now over, Shiro had to prepare for their next task, which is to level up. Looking at the map, she started to mark down the location that Cyrodiil had told her. Snapping her fingers, Shiro brought up the satellite camera and looked at the whole world. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro wanted to see if she could scan the whole world to find where the most mana was gathered. Usually, spots like that would have high-leveled monsters which could be used for some EXP. However, the place choice would be a dungeon that survived the start of the New Age. Most of the low-level dungeons collapsed, so any that survive should be high-leveled. Making some adjustments to the camera, she activated a few runes along with skill chips to adjust the way it saw the world. Viewing the world in color-coded format, she could now see where the most mana was gathered. Seeing a giant cluster where the North Pole should be, Shiro couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. If she had to describe it, it's like several Asharias were stacked on top of one another. Welp, seems like we have our next destination, Shiro muttered before taking control over the satellite that was responsible for that area. Zooming in, Shiro wanted to see if she could spot what was the source of this mana. It's either a powerful monster or another entrance to the beyond. Regardless of what it may be, it's the biggest cluster of mana in this world right now, so it'll be good to scout it out. Projecting the video so that Nantion could also see it, the two of them could see a giant blizzard sweeping over the area. However, it didn't matter since it was impossible to cover up the giant sinkhole leading deep underground. Seeing the size of the sinkhole, Shiro figured that she could probably fly Asharia down without any problems. Seems like this is where all of this mana is coming from. What do you think is under there? Shiro asked as Nantion could only shrug. No idea, but anything that can emit this much mana is definitely dangerous. Let's send some drones to scout it out before we look at the area in person, Nantion suggested. Nodding her head, Shiro snapped her finger and deployed a few drones from the satellites. Shooting towards the Earth in capsules, they bypassed the barriers without harming them. Upon arrival, the drones started to spread themselves out around the North Pole. Surrounding the giant sinkhole where the mana originated from was strange crystals that acted as conductors of sorts. Each of the crystals would amplify the surrounding mana and funnel it back to the sinkhole. It was a strange sight as there was this constant cycle of the hole emitting mana, having the crystals amplify the mana, then reabsorbing that mana after being amplified. Tapping her chin, Shiro furrowed her brows since this was a little strange. While it was true that monsters value mana, it wasn't to the state of needing this much. Once a monster is born, there is a period where they require lots of mana daily to support their growth. This was seen in Een when she was just hatched, but she decided to embrace that side of her. Other monsters tend to stop after a while, so since the chances of it being a high-level monster is low, Shiro figured that it was probably a monster that hasn't been born yet. If it required this much mana to support its growth, then Shiro didn't want to imagine what it's like. Nantion, grab your stuff and pick out a few talented individuals. We'll be setting up a city in the North Pole so that we can investigate this further. I'm not sure how long it'll take, so I'll set up a stationary research city there. The crystals seen in this camera are quite strange since they're similar to the magic circles that I use, but they're natural. If we can use this in the city, we'll be able to increase our power output significantly, Shiro said as she jumped up from her chair. Nodding his head, Nantian did the same as he stored his laptop into his inventory. What kind of advert do you want me to put? Something along the lines of research in the North Pole, and give them some brief details. Prioritize getting some of the stronger medics aside from Sylvia to go on this trip, since we don't know what might happen. Having good medics on standby would be useful. We'll have 2 platoons of mech pilots stationed to protect this place with Sheena and Maria. Sheena should be good in the cold environment, and Maria is a good support for her. These 2 should be able to handle that place without a problem. We'll go there for the first few weeks, but if there is nothing to be found short-term, we'll put our focus elsewhere and level up since we need to reach level 900 to do the raid. Right now I'm in the 700s, so there is still a lot to go. Shiro ordered. MN got it. Ain should be reaching tier 6 soon with the information we received from Misu. Once she classes up, she'll be able to level up properly as well. Everyone else averages around level 500s to 600s. That goes for me too. If we want to all reach level 900, the amount of EXP we need will be ridiculous. Nantian said as Shiro nodded her head. I know. Hence why we'll be looking for a high-level dungeon on the side. I have the satellite searching for a dungeon right now, but most of the time it's just somewhat high-level territories that aren't worth our time. Now I can see why powerful old geezers are stuck at around the same power for a while. It's not that they can't kill the things, but it's a matter of where they can find to kill them. Shiro muttered with a sigh. Well, you can try to cultivate, but the EXP gain is pretty small compared to killing monsters to get EXP. Nantian offered with a shrug. True. Speaking of killing monsters to get EXP, I wonder how much EXP I would give if someone killed me. I'm not trying to jinx it, but it makes you wonder, you know? I'm a demigod at tier 6, an empress as well, and the amount of skills I have. If someone kills me, surely they deserve quite a bounty of EXP, but how much would they get? Would it be enough for them to reach level 1000? Shiro asked as Nantian raised an eyebrow. Not sure, but I presume to be quite a lot. He shrugged. True. ####. Sending out a notice for the new mission. Shiro watched as the application came in since most were looking for new job openings anyways. While Nantian handled the assembly of the new team, Shiro used the drones to create an anchor point for her teleport. Opening a portal, she was immediately blasted with a face full of cold air and snow. Blinking her eyes in surprise, she breathed out a mouth full of condensation. Despite having some resistances, even she felt a little cold in this place. Though it didn't help that she was in a dress rather than something suited for this place. With the crystal conductors in this place amplifying the mana, it's also increasing the cold. I'd say anyone below tier 3 won't be able to survive more than a few hours in this place, and those higher might be able to hold out for a few days. Shiro mused to herself as she flexed her fingers, creating a dress that kept her relatively warm. Since she didn't have an ice spirit that became a pseudo-demigod, she wasn't immune to the cold just yet. She had high resistance, but not immune. Walking around for a while, she was disappointed that everything that could attack her had already fled since they could tell that she was strong. Shaking her head, she walked up to one of the crystal pillars and examined it closely. The crystal was naturally conductive and would amplify any source of mana that came in contact with it. The more mana it comes into contact with, the bigger the amplification. The smallest increase she had discovered through some light experiments seems to be around a 25% boost to power, while it could go up to as high as tripling the mana. If she were to design a rifle with this crystal installed near where the bullet was formed, it could become something rather devastating since she wouldn't need to use so much space for amplification. That space could be used for other effects such as making the bullet multiply itself or target the soul. While she could already make something similar, it would be quite annoying since the overall sniper would be heavy and cumbersome, not suited for the close hand-to-hand combat that she's been in recently. This wasn't limited to snipers either, it applied to hand cannons. There were several reasons as to why she had been using swords and other martial weapons over her firearms right now. It was because it was overkill but not in a good way. It was good since it could instantly kill weak opponents, but strong opponents like Cyrodiil could sense the large gathering of mana immediately and react accordingly. For enemies like her, Shiro would need to use Sylvanis rather than a gun. However, if she succeeds in making a new prototype with this crystal, then it might give her more incentive to use her guns. Creating a dagger in her hand, she broke off a small piece of the crystal before shaping it into a small cartridge of sorts. Thankfully, even after being separated from the main body, the crystal retained its properties. If I was to make this a weapon such as a hand cannon, this crystal will be near the barrel since it's responsible for amplifying the mana. It's easier to disguise small amounts of mana, so by the time I shoot this thing, it would be too late to dodge. Shiro thought to herself as nanobots twisted around her hand, weaving together to form a hand cannon. She replaced a few of the compartments with the crystal, activating her skill analysis. She was surprised to see the nanobots harmonize so well with this material. When she combined the two together, she was half expecting it to blow up in her hand and take an arm with it. But it was actually improving the stability of the entire weapon, as the crystal was not only a great material for amplifying, but it was also a good container. When her weapons blow up, half the time it's because they couldn't handle the mana, and yet with a single crystal, most of the problems were solved. Interesting. I might have to harvest some more of this and see what I can do. Perhaps it'll even improve the mechs and satellites, not just the city overall. Shiro muttered with a small smile. With the new hand cannon created in her hand, Shiro thought about it for a moment before teleporting elsewhere. She didn't want to alert anything that might be in this place with her firing a weapon. Teleporting to one of the ruined cities that was reduced to a frozen tundra, Shiro glanced at one of the monsters that noticed her immediately. It was a level 600 behemoth that had plated armor wrapping its body. A quick scan told her that it had impressive defense that put it roughly around the same level as level 700s to 800s. Inserting roughly enough mana so that it can kill a tier 5, Shiro smiled and pulled the trigger. Watching the bullet escape the barrel of the gun, Shiro immediately noticed a small change. Not only was the bullet now amplified, it had another, unique property that was not a result of her nanobots. As it was traveling towards the behemoth, the bullet started to gain increased momentum by absorbing the surrounding mana along with the target. With the behemoth's mana being absorbed, its movements started to become sluggish as though a slowing field was deployed around him. Once the bullet reached the behemoth, the surroundings seemed to collapse towards it, as though there was a void that demanded all of the mana it could offer. Asterisk crack. Watching the behemoth get snapped in half by the force, Shiro widened her eyes in surprise. The muscular figure of the monster started to shrivel up before finally collapsing to the side, now completely devoid as mana. As for the bullet, a new crystal conductor started to sprout out from the behemoth's body. Looking at her gun, Shiro furrowed her brows. This definitely needs more experimenting before I can actually use this without any worries. If this thing can somehow backfire on me, it would be quite troublesome. However, the properties of this material seems pretty handy for a weapon. If I experiment and try to make the best hand cannon possible, it might reach the level of Sylvanis. Though I doubt it would, since Sylvanis was upgraded to Rainbow after Error ate it. Shiro muttered while glancing into her mana realm. Seeing the red circuit tree silent as ever, Shiro couldn't help but wonder what was happening with Error. Since she could still activate him as usual, she knew that he was mostly fine, but it felt a little off. Opening her eyes, Shiro glanced at her right hand and activated Error. Seeing the black material cover her arm and engrave it with red circuits, she poked at it a few times and saw that it wasn't reacting at all. Shaking her head, she deactivated the skill before examining the crystal conductor that sprouted out of the behemoth's corpse. Placing her hand on the surface, she scanned the internal structure and saw that it was pretty much the exact same as the previous conductors. Only this time it was also filled with life energy. She recognizes this since it was the same energy she felt from Gaia's divinity. Wait. Shiro paused as she realized something. Quickly firing another shot at the ground, she wanted to see if the conductors could sprout as well, but there was nothing. Only a somewhat powerful attack that absorbed mana, but no crystal was created. Seeing as how the behemoth shriveled up while this crystal appeared, Shiro could guess that this was only created when there is something being used as a sacrifice. If that's the case, then all of the crystals in the North Pole were monsters who had their life force drained. With how big some of the crystals are, I'd estimate that some of them are higher than level 700, perhaps even 800, Shiro thought with a frown. Thinking about it for a moment, she decided to look for another monster. Camouflaging her mana to feel like the behemoths, she could see a few level 600s coming out of hiding. Spotting one that broke off from the rest, she flew over and kicked it in the head. Asterisk bang. Crashing into the ground, the monsters struggled as vision was blurred from that kick. Without a shred of mercy, Shiro grabbed it by the back of the neck and threw it into a portal. She was going to turn him into one of the crystals and see where the life energy disappeared to. Teleporting back to the North Pole, she grabbed it by the tail and dragged it towards the sinkhole. Sorry about this, but it's nothing personal really, Shiro said as she fired it, killing the monster. Watching the crystal sprout out of its body once more, Shiro could sense the life energy flowing through the ground, towards the bottom of the sinkhole. Narrowing her eyes, she was about to continue when she felt her heart pound. Seeing the shadows begin to distort, she frowned and glanced at the time. "Time's up already," she muttered, massaging her eyes. She flicked her wrist and summoned an avatar. Creating a portal for herself, she teleported back to Asharia and spotted Nantion in the command center. He was currently completing the tasks that she had given him. Without saying anything, she sat down next to him and held his sleeve. "Are you sending out an avatar again?" Nantion asked, as Shiro would do this whenever there is something she needed to do that might take more than 10 minutes. Sorry about this." Shiro apologized as Nantion shook his head. "It's fine. Have fun exploring. Tell me if something interesting happens, okay?" Nantion smiled as Shiro nodded her head. Leaning back, she closed her eyes and focused on her avatar. Moving her body, Shiro walked to the edge of the sinkhole and narrowed her eyes. Conjuring up a drone, she had it travel ahead of her while she followed behind. With her passive skills, it wasn't hard to see in the dark, but despite that, it was still difficult to see the bottom due to how deep it was. Surprisingly, it took her more than 30 minutes before she could actually see the bottom. At the bottom of the sinkhole was a white jewel of sorts. While she described it as a jewel, it was better to call it a giant building instead. With how big this thing was, she could fit several mechs inside. As she approached the jewel, she noticed the life force being absorbed into the jewel. "It's an egg," Shiro muttered, as she wasn't sure what kind of egg would produce something like this. Activating analysis, she tried to look into the interior of the egg, but all she could see was a swirl of mana with no distinct shape. 80% of the life force would enter the egg, but the remaining 20% would flow into the ground and flow elsewhere. Surrounding this egg were countless skeletons with crystal conductors exploding out from their ribcage. Sensing the mana, she understood that the source was inside this egg, and it was constantly emitting mana while absorbing the amplified amount back in. This constant cycle allowed it to store up a massive amount of mana, but she was unsure as to what was supposed to be born from this. Snapping her finger, she sent out a pulse of mana, so see if she could map out this area. However, the moment she used mana, it was absorbed into the egg almost immediately. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro tried to summon some nanobots to create a device that could map out the area using sound. But similar to what just happened, any ambient mana is being absorbed almost immediately. So items that contain mana don't have it forcefully dragged out. But when they try to use mana and project it into their surroundings, it'll get absorbed. Shiro thought with a frown. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightnovelworld.com. This'll make a lot of things annoying considering the fact that she uses nanobots. If she wanted to make a base here, she'll have to piece it together with parts that are already finished. Thankfully, this effect only happens in the bottom, so she can make the parts above ground. The same goes with flight. While she may retain her ability to fly, she can't fly too fast, as the mana will be drained immediately. Right now, she is able to match the output with the absorption, so she can still fly as usual. I think I'll get everyone to observe this for a while. See if we can find anything out about the origin of the egg and crystals. I should also get a few to experiment with the crystals and guns so that I can make a blueprint that guarantees my safety instead of a weapon that might just kill me. Shiro thought to herself, since she didn't want to imagine what would happen if that crystal entered her body. Flying back up took a little longer than floating down, but she managed to fly up without any problems. Setting up some drones right now, she sent them down to explore the bottom of the sinkhole while making a temporary base here. She won't make it a city just yet since she didn't know what kind of dangers may lurk around. With some early preparation done, Shiro dismissed her avatar for now. Since this place couldn't work as a place for EXP farming, she'll have to look elsewhere. Spending the rest of the day looking for potential locations using her satellite, she soon received news that Een was just outside of the volcano region with Addy. This region was being protected by Theria, so they'll need to be safe. However, since Addy was with Een, Shiro figured that the two of them could handle it. Just in case, she had satellites on standby to help out if they ran into trouble. Squatting on a boulder, Een narrowed her eyes at volcanoes that made up the mountain range. "What are you doing, big sis?" Addy asked as he stood normally beside her. "I'm squatting. You see, it looks ominous if you squat on something while overlooking the place you want to invade." Een explained as Addy raised an eyebrow. "Really? Yup. Trust your big sis. Now come. You squat as well." Een gestured towards him as she shuffled to the side, making some room for Addy. Furrowing his brows, Addy nodded his head and crouched next to her. Squatting in silence, Addy glanced towards Een. "So when will we attack?" "Not yet. I'm still scanning for how many people are here. From what I can tell, there are roughly 7 Tier 6 monsters guarding this entire place considering their mana signals, while several hundreds, possibly even thousands of Tier 5 workers. Calling them workers might not be accurate considering the fact that all of them have collars around their necks. Ian muttered, "So how do you want to do this? Loud and explosive, or sneaky?" Addy asked since he was fine with doing both. He was just here to help out Ian after all. "Good question. Let's play rock, paper, scissors. If I win, we go loud and clear. If I lose, we go sneaky, okay?" Ian said as Addy nodded his head. Since it seemed to him like Ian wanted to go in loud and clear, Addy figured that he'll lose on purpose. "Rock, paper, scissors," Ian called out. As his hand was falling, Addy observed Yin's hand and noticed that she was also changing her choice. Wait, is she going scissors or paper? Addy thought as cold sweat dripped down his face. Furrowing his brows, he continued to change his choice as their hands became a blur of motions. When they finally settled with a choice, they ended with a tie. "Addy, you really like changing your choice, huh?" Ian said as her smile twitched. "Same goes for you, big sis. I figured that you'd want to go in with explosive intent." Addy replied, "I do, but I wanted to spice things up a little. If we sneak and then explode everything from the inside out, wouldn't that be quite the sight? Then why didn't you say so? You know I don't mind what we do. I'm just here to help." Addy pouted lightly as Ian coughed. "All right, let's sneak him then." Nodding his head, Addy waved his hand and transformed his form so that he would match the location a little better. If Theria controlled monsters, this was a good excuse to act as a higher-up. Flames erupted around Addy's body as he transformed into a mass of swirling flames. 2 neon blue orbs represented his eyes. "Oh my, maybe I should change as well. I doubt my true form would get past the checks. I haven't seen another phoenix except for me or my other mum after all." Ian scratched her hair, thinking hard. She eventually settled with a tiny bird form. Transforming herself into a bird that was smaller than a palm, Ian sat on Addy's shoulder. "Just hide me with your flames, and we'll be fine." Ian reassured as Addy nodded his head. There was a clear path towards the center where most of the guards are stationed. Magic circles could be seen everywhere as neither Ian nor Addy knew what they were meant to do. Since there were too many unknown variables, they decided to play it safe for now. As they approached the area, they saw a single tower connected to a floating platform above the lava. Bridges connected the tower to the volcanoes as slaves stumbled back and forth, carrying strange luminescent rocks that emitted a red glow. Sensing Addy's aura, the slaves instinctively stayed away from him. Approaching the tower without any problems for the time being, they spotted the first monster. "Halt! Who are you?" The monster grumbled as Addy narrowed his eyes. "I am sent by Her Highness as part of the new staff. Take me to the overseer of this place," Addy said as his voice caused the surroundings to shake. Sensing his strength, the monster quickly bowed and nodded his head. Within Theria's rule, only strength mattered. Weak monsters dared not to question the commands from above. "Understood. Allow me to show you the way." Nodding his head, Addy followed at a casual pace. "He seems quite afraid, huh?" Ian whispered. "Amen. From the way he looks at me, I'd say that they'll be punished severely for disobeying the higher-ups. I'd say that a good description would be drinking a poison that would kill you, but you don't know when." Addy whispered back. "That's pretty accurate." Following the monster, they entered the tower. The interior of the tower was rather spacious, with a single spiral staircase leading upstairs. None of the rooms were bordered off, so they could see a few monsters sleeping out in the open and some even mating in the corner. When Ian saw that, she immediately covered Addy's eyes, causing him to stumble for a bit, but recovered swiftly so that the monster doesn't notice anything that's off. "The floor above is where the overseer is. I cannot enter," the monster said. Addy nodded. "You can leave now." Watching the monster leave, Addy scanned the floor above and sensed 2 Tier 6 monsters with one sitting in front of a desk and the other looking out the window. "Big sis, there are only 2 Tier 6 above. We can kill them easily, but do you want to see if we can get any information from them first?" Addy asked as Ian nodded her head. "Let's play it passively for now. Don't expose the fact that we will kill them." Walking up the steps, Addy immediately came into eye contact with the one sitting behind the desk. He had a half-human, half-monster body, a humanoid torso but monstrous arms covered with natural plated armor. Neon blue glows could be seen between the gaps as 2 horns created from the game glow hovered above his head. "What is your business here?" the overseer asked as he narrowed his eyes at the newcomer. "Her Highness has sent me here to make a routine check. She is wondering why we haven't gotten any results yet. After what had happened in the event, I hope you have some good news for her." Addy bluffed as he had no idea what was going on here. If he mixed in a few truths, it should make his story more believable. Her Highness sent you here? The overseer furrowed his brows. However, the moment he asked that question, he could sense that Addy's aura shifted and started to grow, not wanting to displease this monster if he was indeed sent by Her Highness. Plus, there have been situations like this before, so he sat back and relaxed. I see. We do have some good news, but not much progress here either. It has been rather difficult to break through the tomb to achieve our goals, but so far, we've collected enough molten essence to complete stage 1. The overseer replied as Addy nodded his head. Only at stage 1. Her Highness wants you to hurry things up. After our loss, we're being pressured on all sides. Take me to the tomb. I'll see if I can do anything about it. Addy said, but the overseer furrowed his brows before nodding his head. Considering your nature, I suppose Her Highness sent you here to deal with the flames. The heat and flames have been our biggest obstacles after all. The overseer said as he gestured to the flames on Addy's body. Follow me. Grim Lore, stay here and deal with anyone that looks for me. The overseer commanded as the other monster bowed at his command. Taking the lead, the overseer started to make his way down. However, the moment he passed Addy, he felt as though he sensed a familiar energy, but dismissed it as flames. After being here for so long, everything felt the same to him, so it was not surprising that a monster made from flames would feel the same. How long will you be staying here? He asked curiously. Only a few short days. I have orders elsewhere, so I will not be staying here. Addy replied as the overseer nodded his head. They had a few short conversations on the way, but Addy did not say much. The more they spoke, the more his disguise fell apart, so he tried to stay silent if he could. Crossing several bridges, they walked towards the center of the mountain range where the light distorted due to the heat. If any of the slaves walk past this point, they'll dry up and die within minutes. Ignoring him, Addy stepped forward and ignored the heat. Big sis, I think I can sense something similar to your mana. I think the tomb he mentioned is the last piece that you need. Addy whispered as he nodded her head. Seems so. What do you think they wanted to do with that last piece, though? We can ask him, but it might be risky since I'll have to clear the way. It's worth the risk. If push comes to shove, then we'll just eliminate him. Een suggested while narrowing her eyes at the overseer behind them. Raising his arms, Addy let out a pulse of energy as the flames were immediately pushed to the side. Snapping his fingers, a barrier of sorts appeared, blocking out the heat. Blinking his eyes in surprise, the overseer didn't think that the heat which could kill was dealt with so easily. Why are you dawdling? Let's go, Addy said coldly as the overseer nodded his head. If Her Highness has sent someone of his caliber here, then she must want to finish this task as soon as possible. He thought to himself as he decided to address this man with more respect. Sir, since you are dealing with the flames quickly, shall I inform the rest of the slaves to carry the molten essence over? The overseer asked as Addy nodded his head. If we can finish everything today, then it'll give me more time to deal with my other tasks tomorrow. Nodding his head, the overseer excused himself for a moment while Addy made his way towards the center. The land started to tilt down as several lava falls could be seen, gathering into a lake at the bottom. A strange marbled material could be seen around an entrance of sorts. Their surface glowed with a soft orange/red hue to the lava. You sense that energy? Een whispered as Addy nodded his head. I do. It's the same as yours, big sis. The last piece is definitely in here. I'm not sure if there is a trial or anything else protecting it, but it seems like there is only a barrier of flames and heat right now. Addy muttered since this wasn't a good defense in his eyes. After all, anyone with enough resistance to flames can just walk through without any problem. Well, it's done a good job so far. No one else has been able to pierce this barrier and claim whatever is inside. As they were walking down, Addy sensed that the overseer was catching up again, and this time with some company. Sir, I have brought the slaves with the molten essence. The overseer reported as Addy nodded his head. I'll clear the path then. Waving his hand, Addy fended off the heat so that the slaves could enter without being burnt to a crisp. The further they traveled, the hotter it became. It was to the point that even with his barrier, the slaves started to feel the heat. It wasn't to the point that it'll kill them, but the situation wasn't looking good. I won't be able to hold off the heat and flames if we keep going. I might not be affected, but everyone else here will be. Addy thought to himself. He was quite surprised that the flames could push back his barrier to this extent, even though it couldn't harm him or Een. However, even if he is concerned, he can't say anything right now. He knew that the hierarchy that Theria had created was one based on strength. The moment he showed concern or pity for those under him, His disguise would fall apart before they even know what they're supposed to do. Without saying anything, he tried his best to improve the barrier for the slaves so that they're not killed. Walking down some makeshift steps, they approached a set of gates that blocked the path forward. At this point, everyone except for the overseer, Addie and Ian, were on the verge of passing out. Sweat covered their bodies as their visions shifted. This is what's been delaying the progress. We found ways to get to this stage after some sacrifices, but we haven't been able to enter through forceful means. There doesn't seem to be a key either. If only we can open this door, we'll actually be able to use the molten essence as a catalyst to harness the phoenix power inside. The overseer clicked his tongue. And after harnessing the phoenix power, what do you plan to do with it? Addie asked as he narrowed his eyes. Well, to cultivate a phoenix of wait, shouldn't you? Pausing mid-sentence, the overseer immediately summoned a sword as he and two other tier SIXS launched an attack towards him. Slamming his hand down, a wave of flames erupted out, pushing the three back while avoiding the slaves. Much better in this form. Atesh smiled as he stretched his body in human form. Next to him, Een had also materialized herself. Once again, she was in her mature form. So it turns out that you want to use this to make a second phoenix to put under your control. Shame on you guys, Een said as she snapped her fingers. Suddenly, the flames around the tomb started to transform as the ground rumbled from her presence. The red lava that surrounded the place turned purple with hints of red, and so did the flames. Turning towards the slaves, Een smiled. You can take refuge for now. We won't drag you into this. Snapping her fingers, Een opened portals beneath them as they were sent to the rift. Closing the portals, Een walked towards the three-tier SIXS that were glaring at them. Swift or slow? Addie asked as he massaged his wrist. Swift. I want to be finished up with this place in an hour max. All right. You take 2, or should I take 2? I'll let you deal with 2 then. Big Sis has to upgrade after this after all. Een chuckled, nodding his head. Both Addie and Een flared their mana as the entrance was sealed off, turning the inside of this place into a fiery hell. Atesh narrowed his eyes and smiled. Die, snapping his fingers and pointing towards the overseer and his closest ally. Flames burst out from the ground, latched onto their ankles, and started to absorb their mana to fuel its growth. With the flames crawling up their body, the two were distracted for just a moment, but that was enough for Addie to close the gap. Grabbing the two by the head, he slammed it together before grabbing their throats. Reinforcing his grip, he smiled before pushing the neck into their body. Snapping the spine in half from the force, the head was now where the stomach should be. Lava could be seen flowing in the inside of their bodies since Addie wanted to make sure they were dead or sure. The head and the stomach was just extra flavor. He wanted to see what Shiro enjoyed about getting her hands dirty, and he had to admit that it does feel quite good. As for Een, her opponent has been turned into a charred art piece with missing limbs and a deformed torso. I'll teleport the slaves to the surface. Addie, you go deal with the other tier SIXS that are around while I go upgrade. All right, good luck, Big Sis. Addie smiled as he started to walk away from the area. Focusing on the 2 gates, Een sliced her palm and placed it against the door. The moment her blood came into contact with the material, red and gold runes appeared around the cave as mana surged towards her location. Asterisk clack. Hearing the sound of the doors unlocking, Een took a step in. ####. Arriving at the surface, Addie floated to the highest point and released his mana, drawing the attention of all the tier SIXS that were in the area. That should be everyone. Addie muttered with a small smile. I'm sorry to inform you, but I'm afraid this area has been taken over. Surrender or die. He called out as they were looking at him as if he had brain damage. My message might not be clear, Addie said as she tapped his chin. Releasing his aura at full strength, the temperature shot up as a myriad of Tier 6 magic circles started to appear in the sky, creating a magic formation. Allow me to reiterate. Surrender or die, last chance to make a choice. Addie offered with a small smile. ####. While Addie was dealing with all the Tier SIXS in the area, Een was undergoing her evolution. She could feel the energy flowing up from the lava and entering her body, refining her flames while all of the molten essence in the mountain range started to glow. Her senses spread out, past the mountain range and the wasteland that surrounded it. She could feel energy nodes spread out through the land. Buried beneath the ground was a formation, and each of the nodes were anchors of the formation, gathering mana for who knows how long and funneling it all to her. All conditions fulfilled. Special entity, Een, will now undergo evolution. Race and class upgrade. Unique title granted. Title, 7 Sins, Gluttony. Kennen will eat anything and everything. Anything she eats will be turned to mana and HP. ####. Watching through the cams of her satellite, Shiro was surprised to see the world change around the volcanoes. The skies darken as a purple pillar of energy shot into the sky, morphing into the shape of a phoenix. It let out an earth-shattering cry. Suddenly, everyone received the notification. 7 Sins, Gluttony, has descended into this world. Reading the notification, Shiro blinked her eyes. Seeing as how this appeared just as Een finished her evolution, Shiro's smile started to twitch. As you are directly related to the 7 Sins title holder, you are allowed additional information. There can and will always have 7 unique 7 Sin title holders. If they are killed, their title is transferred to the Slayer. 7 Sin users have additional influence over the demon realm and monsters with demonic properties. 7 Sin title holders are allowed to manifest their true self and register as a world boss, gaining increased stats. This can only be activated once every 5 months. Due to Yin's traits, her race has changed to Phoenix of Gluttony. She retains her control over fire with some improvements. As her contractor, you gain a lesser form of the 7 Sin, Gluttony. Entity, Shiro, is granted the skill Devour. Devour. You are able to consume the attacks of your enemies to regain missing health and mana. The more mana the attack contains, the more you recover. You may also eat materials, but the conversion is weaker. If you consume something over your capacity, this skill will be sealed until you have digested the attack. Cooldown, not applicable. Cost, not applicable. Current capacity is equal to 100% of mana. Reading this skill, Shiro was silent. She knew that Een was a glutton, but she didn't expect her to be recognized as something akin to a world boss by the system. Right now, Een is the only holder of a 7 Sin title, since there hasn't been a case of this before, which caused her to wonder who else might get the title in their part. For Een, she was always a glutton, so that might have factored in her obtaining the title. Thinking about this, Shiro couldn't help but wonder what her sin would be. She figured that she would probably be wrath, pride, or greed, since there are large traces of these in her actions. For pride, she is too proud to serve someone as a subordinate. Even if the other party is a god, she has to be equal or higher. For greed, she wanted things her way. She was greedy for the outcome that was best in her eyes. She was greedy for strength. And finally, wrath was pretty much self-explanatory. Seems like Een has finished her evolution, Nan Tian said as he glanced at the camera and the notification he had just received. Yup. I hope that there isn't a giant glowing target on Een, otherwise it'll be annoying, Shiro said as she face-palmed. Checking the camera, Shiro could see that Addie was cleaning up the situation while they were distracted by Yin's new form. Understanding that they don't need her to look out for them, Shiro turned the camera elsewhere. She wanted to continue their search for a good leveling up zone. However, the moment she looked at the map, she noticed one of the medium to large mana zones suddenly disappear. Raising her eyebrow in surprise, Shiro had the camera reverse the footage. ####. We're not leveling up quick enough. Lyrica frowned as she stabbed her sword into the skull of another monster. Well, there's not much else we can do. The monsters all average around level 600. Anything higher than the peak of tier 5 is hard for us as a group. We've just leveled up to tier 5, while you're level 500 right now. Unless you can level up to tier 6, we can't look for anything harder, Asher reminded as Lyrica furrowed her brows. Scratching her hair, she sighed and shook her head. Let's continue to the source of mana we discovered earlier. Hopefully we can find something to help me reach tier 6. Lyrica sighed. She understood that she needs to find something that can help her push past the boundary of tier 6, but so that something couldn't be found. Every time she tried to meditate to find that spark, it was just darkness. While they were making their way towards the large source of mana, they were ambushed a few times by tier 6 monsters that were no higher than level 600. Since she had killed quite a few of them, she racked up quite a few pseudo-levels that helped put her roughly on the same level in terms of stats. With her techniques and caution, killing them wasn't too difficult, but she knew that she couldn't do anything to Queens nor the being that took her parents away. She needed to reach tier 6 so that she was in the same tier as them. Upon reaching the edge of the area where she sensed the mana, she could see mana being condensed into mist. A strange liquid coated the surface of the ground as she recognized it to be the same liquid as the mana potions that Shiro sold in her city. Furrowing her brows, she was about to continue when she saw a notification. 7 Sins, Gluttony, has descended into this world. 7 sins gluttony? Lyrica muttered in mild confusion, since she didn't think there was anything that would warrant the system to give out this kind of notification. Focusing her mind, she stabbed her sword into the ground and sent her senses out. Scanning past the country she was in, she continued to expand her search until she felt the familiar mana that was flaring wildly right now. Recognizing it to be the mana that belonged to Een, she understood that Een must have upgraded to tier 6. Squeezing the hilt of her blade, she opened her eyes. So even Yin's reached tier 6 now. She thought with a sigh. Let's keep going, she said as Asher nodded his head. Did you find who is tagged as gluttony? He asked curiously. Yes, I do. It's Een, the phoenix you met back in the city. She's managed to reach tier 6. Lyrica replied as they traveled deeper into the territory. When she scanned this place, she couldn't find any signal that might tell them about a monster being inside, so the trip to the center should be smooth sailing. Is that so? To think that she'll get a notification for leveling up. Do you think Nitha would get the same once she levels up to tier 6? Asher asked as Nitha blinked her eyes for a moment before shaking her head. Yin's level up is special, I think. If every monster gets a notification, then there would be thousands considering how many there are, Nitha said as Asher agreed. Talking amongst themselves while traveling to the center of the zone, Lyrica furrowed her brows as their surroundings distorted the closer they got to the center. She wasn't sure, but it seemed as though they were walking deep into the earth even though the path was flat. The surroundings would darken until no light could be seen, and yet the path was clear. They've stopped talking by now since it was too strange. Floating stones acted as steps. Senses were blocked from pushing past the darkness, and only the sound of their steps could be heard. Maybe we should go back. This is a little too strange. Creating spells here is a little hard since the mana is making it mark for me to interfere with the world, Asher asked with a frown. Perhaps, Lyrica agreed since it was too strange. However, just as they were thinking of turning back, they saw the exit of the steps. Nodding at one another, they decided to have a look and discovered a strange world beyond the darkness. Even though they were deep underground, the sky could be seen, but the color was strange. Pure black, and yet the place was still lit. A single altar could be seen in the distance with a figure standing in front of it. Turning around, the figure noticed them as they all entered combat stance. Before they could react, a portal opened as the figure appeared in front of them. Who are you? Lyrica asked while gesturing for everyone to back off. Me? I'm a dragon, but that's not important. Do you know how to open doors? The dragon asked as Lyrica raised an eyebrow in confusion since the man held no hostility towards them. What kind of door is it? It's a door to this place called the Beyond, but it doesn't seem like it lets me enter. If you do me a favor of opening this place, I'll count it as me owing you. I'll even make a vow if you can help me open it. It's a good opportunity for you since I'm a level 900 dragon. I can protect you if you run into trouble. The man smiled as he patted his chest. Having some suspicions about this, she glanced back to see the party's choice when she noticed that Nitha didn't even dare to look up and understood that this man was probably being honest about being a level 900 dragon. If you're still concerned, then I'll make a vow on not hurting you, he said as he blinked his eyes. That would be helpful. Lyrica nodded. Watching the man vow to the system, she sighed in relief when the golden chains appeared, signifying the vow activating. Sheathing her sword, she walked towards the altar. Reaching the altar, Lyrica glanced back. Are you sure you won't kill us after opening the gate? Nope. Plus, you got her scent on you. The man shook his head while floating with his legs crossed. Whose scent? Lyrica asked curiously. There was this white-haired girl last time I tried to open a gate. However, since she teleported in front of me, I sneezed and almost killed her. I wanted to apologize, but she ran away. If you're related to her, then I can just follow you and apologize at a later date. The man shrugged as he pulled out a bottle. Immediately recognizing it to be the mana potion bottle that Shiro used in Asharia, she understood that he was probably stating the truth. In that case, then what's the place known as the Beyond? Lyrica asked. I'm not sure, but my mother has told me that it is the place where mana originated from. It's a good place for dragons like us since we'll be able to get stronger just by being in the realm. Same goes for the young lass next to him. He pointed at Nitha, who hid behind Asher in fear. She'll definitely level up a bunch in the Beyond. For beings like you lot, though, there are monsters in there for you to hunt. There will be moments when you'll be able to enter the gate naturally, but that only applies for monsters. Every monster you find in that realm will help you level up a bunch, but the risk is just as great. You're not even tier 6 just yet, so I can help since there won't be much you can kill in there. The man explained as Lyrica furrowed her brows. Why are you going out of your way to make things favorable for us? Well, If I help you, that girl might forgive me, since it's rude to sneeze on people. The dragon coughed. Hearing this, Lyrica blinked, since this dragon didn't seem like a dragon. Rather, he was like a house pet that was upset since it did something bad. Oh right. I will have to warn you that most gates are one-time things that will close after the first use. It'll open again in the future, but if you want to leave the beyond, you'll need to look for a different exit. The realm has been unstable after something that had happened a few months back, so most gates remained closed for a long while. After we enter, it might be a long time before we can even leave. The dragon cautioned as Lyrica thought about it. I'm fine with that since I want to get stronger anyways. I'm not sure about everyone else though, she said, glancing back at the party. We'll join you. We also need to get stronger after all. There's been a few times that we couldn't help a few people since the enemy was simply too strong after all. Cadme sighed since it left a bitter taste in her mouth. How they had to watch and do nothing about the settlement being ruled by level 700 monsters. The humans that were turned to slaves and forced to work the rest of their life away. By now, it was more common to see monsters than it was humans. Seeing that everyone else was agreeing with Cadme's opinion, Lyrica nodded and looked at the supposed gate. Blinking her eyes, she turned to the dragon. How do I even open this? She asked curiously. Just place your hand on it and insert some mana. Since we're in a group, all of us will be dragged to the beyond. Nodding her head, Lyrica placed her hand on the altar and inserted as much mana as she could. Suddenly, a tier 7 magic circle appeared beneath them as the floor gave way to a portal. Without being able to react, all of them were dragged through. Once they were gone, the portal closed up and the altar shattered apart. The mana in the area started to fade away as the gate was now gone. #####. Seeing that it was the dragon, Shiro couldn't help but widen her eyes in shock, but relaxed after seeing the vow he made. Considering how Lyrica was helping him, it was probably a vow to not harm her. Seems like they're going to the beyond. The gate is broken after their entry, so I won't be able to follow. But since they have the dragon guarding them, they'll be safe. Shiro sighed in relief and leaned back. Suddenly, a portal opened as Addy could be seen coming back with Ian on his back. We're back, Mom. Big Sis has just finished her evolution, so she's a bit exhausted right now. Addy smiled softly as Ian lazily raised her hand. Standing up, Shiro walked over and patted Yin's head. You've worked hard. Go get some rest. There won't be any new assignments for a week, so take this time to do whatever you want. Hearing this, Ian nodded and closed her eyes. Watching Addy leave the command center, Shiro sat back down. Feeling her phone vibrate, she saw that it was Misu. Sup, this is Shiro speaking. This is Misu. I've finished most of my work, so I'm taking a break right now. Mind coming with me to my city so that we can deal with our previous agreement? Misu asked as Shiro nodded her head. Sure, I was also going to ask you about that. I was thinking if I were to set up an anchor in your city, I'll be able to convert it into a flying city as well. Make it so that the Lightning Queen won't be able to launch an attack on your people. You can do that? Misu asked in surprise. Yup, it depends on how big your city is though. I'm not sure how much we can do with just 2 anchors, but I came across a rather interesting crystal not too long ago that amplified mana. If we experiment with it a bit more, it might help us solve this problem. But that's talk for the future. Our goal is to revive everyone properly first, right? Shiro smiled. MN, where do you want to meet up? I'll send us to the city. Mrs. said as Shiro thought about it. Just come to the command center. Nantion might need to come with us. All right, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Ending the call, Shiro sighed. Busy, lots of things to do. She muttered as Nantion chuckled. We'll have to work hard then. If it wasn't busy, we might be bored out of our minds. He smiled as Shiro nodded. That's true. Resting for 10 minutes while enjoying some juice, Shiro heard a knock and knew that it was Misu and Essel. Come in, she called out with a smile. Glancing towards the door, Shiro could see that Misu returned to her formal attire, and so did Essel. Ready? Misu asked with a small smile. Nodding her head, Shiro waved her hand, and her outfit changed to fit the occasion. Returning to her usual combat dress with silver armor, stockings, and boots, Shiro adjusted her gloves and stood in front of Misu. Ready when you are. Nodding her head, Misu made sure that all 4 of them were in range before activating a teleport circle that would send them to her city. Shielding her eyes from the bright light, Shiro decided to add her own anchor point to this city so that she wouldn't have to go through this. Something her future self did. We're here. We're not at the main city, yet since I want to deal with the smaller ones first. I have about 5 cities in total, for branches and 1 main. Misu explained while waving her hand with a small smile, and the crowd that noticed them. Noticing that Mrs. said she had 5 cities, Shiro understood why she seemed more serious and depressed in the future. After all, her future self teleported them to the main city, Haven of the Dead, so easily, which probably means that the other cities were destroyed. If she saw most of her subjects die, then it's no surprise that she'll be depressed. I would probably feel the same, though I won't be as depressed as her. I'll feel bad, but that's about it. Shiro thought to herself. She had to admit that Misa definitely cared more about her subjects than she ever will. Shaking her head, she watched as Misu called everyone to gather at the main square in 10 minutes. Seeing everyone rush to spread this information, Shiro couldn't help but smile. You are well received. Shiro smiled as Misu nodded. That's true. You'll be the same once they realize what you can do for them. Misu replied as they walked towards the main square. While this was happening, Shiro activated one of her skills and checked out their condition. Understanding that the reason as to why they were undead is because Misu was compensating for parts of their missing soul and giving them a container to hold that soul, Shiro understood what she needed to do. After having her own soul healed, she somewhat understood what to do as it required divine energy. It may take a few attempts, but that was fine. Watching everyone gather in the main square, Misu nodded in satisfaction before opening her mouth. Ahem. Several months ago, when this world changed for the worse, I had given you an option. With my limited power, I could bring you back to life, but you'll forever be undead as I am a necromancer. Outside of the cities, it will be hard to sustain everyone, so you had been stuck here. However, I wanted to give you more. I wanted you to have a living body like it was before the calamity. You did not deserve to have your life stripped away from you, so I present you with a new option. An allied queen who was able to revive without any backlash, such as turning them into undead. Misu called out as everyone turned towards Shiro, who stood next to her with a small smile. Giving them a wave, Shiro waited for Misu to finish her speech while she was formulating the spell in her mind. First and foremost, she needed to repair their soul first. For most people, this was a bit easier considering the fact that their soul didn't hold much power. Therefore, repairing it was a simple matter of finding the right runes and using a slither of divine energy to help them recover. Since there was so many, she couldn't heal a soul in one go, or else she won't have divine energy for others. Instead, she wanted to leave a trace of her divine energy in them and let them recover over time. Since divine energy couldn't be sensed or used unless you fulfill some prior requirements, it was safe to say that the strand of divine energy wouldn't be used up and would passively heal their soul. It would also support the framework of their being, so there would be no need for Mrs. Anchor to keep them from leaving the city. The last step would be the body, and she had to admit, this one was a little difficult considering their condition. Most of them no longer had a body, and their physical form right now was a direct result of Misu's skills. If she wanted to craft them a physical body that aged like usual, it was going to be hard, and that was in her dictionary, so to others it would be almost impossible to accomplish. The best she would be able to do is give them prosthetics for those that have already lost their physical body. As for those that kept their old body, she could patch them up without any problem. Even Sylvia could. Thinking about Sylvia, Shiro blinked her eyes. Wait, Sylvia can also revive people. While her window of opportunity is small compared to mine, her expertise in healing spells is second to none in Asharia. Perhaps she'll have a way for them to recover their physical body without needing me to give them a body of metal. Nanotech may have become a branch of the creation divinity, but my powers over creation are weak. At best, what I make can be called imitations of the real power. Shiro thought to herself as she overlaid a contact lens over her eye. Bringing up her chat with Sylvia, she sent her a message. Shiro, Sylvia, I might need your help for something. Are you free right now? Sylvia, yes I am. I just finished a surgery, so I have some downtime right now. Shiro, great. Here's a question. If there is a soul in front of you, would you be able to give it a physical body? Sylvia, a physical body, as in their previous body with flesh and bones. Shiro, yes. I want to avoid using my nanobots if I can. Not too keen on making them all robots. Sylvia, I can't say for sure. If you have even a piece of them, dead or not, I will be able to repair them back to their old form, since for my healing spells to work, there needs to be something for me to heal. I can't heal something from nothing. That's not how healing spells work, so that's why I'm not sure. Sylvia, however, I was working on something else in my spare time. You see, the body and soul is connected, right? The soul would have a recollection of what their body was like in the deepest parts of their consciousness. If I was able to use that as a foundation for the healing spell, I can try to give them a physical body. So far, The experiments have been done on some monsters who had their soul extracted. As long as I have a piece of flesh and bone, I'll be able to begin the healing process, but it's complicated and hard to execute with a high chance of failure so far. If you give me more time, I can probably figure something out, but right now, it's out of my capabilities. Shiro. All right, I'll give them a substitute body based on their recollection first. To be fair, Misu has already done that since the form they have now was created thanks to her skill. It's a projection of their physical form. Sylvia, then we can probably work on something in our spare time. Talking to Sylvia for a little longer, Shiro ended the chat just in time as Misu welcomed Shiro to say a few words. So Misu has explained, I am an ally, and I do have the capabilities to help you. However, there is one thing that you must take note of. For those of you that no longer have a physical body, I'll need to give you a prosthetic one for now until we are able to create a body from nothing. The physical body would be created from metal that simulates the properties of flesh and even the functions of the normal human body. It will allow you to feel hungry and consume substance as usual, Shiro explained while snapping her finger. Next to her, nanobots appeared before transforming into two humans, male and female. They both wore outfits similar to what everyone is wearing right now. As you can see, it looks like normal flesh, feels like flesh, but it is not a proper body made from flesh and bone. Summoning a sword, Shiro slashed towards the two robots, shocking the people. They quickly covered the eyes of the children since they didn't want them to see more slaughter after the first day. However, what happened next shocked them as the sword was snapped in half. As you can see, in this form, you are quite impervious to most damages. But I need to warn you, if you choose this, there might be some problems that arise later. You may not have the same caution as you would in a normal body. I can add pain sensors, but even if you feel pain, your body would not be damaged. I'll let you digest this information and think about whether or not you want this form. I can say that I will repair your soul fully. Those that have a portion of their physical body, please separate yourself from the group so that I may use the spell, Shiro ordered as she watched everyone try to organize themselves. Turning to Misu, Shiro opened her mouth. As I said in the announcement, they'll need to have a piece of their body for me to be able to do anything. Otherwise, I can only give them a robotic substitute for now. Revival works in the way that they still need their previous container. Quite a few people here are missing that, so we can't solve everything just yet, Shiro explained apologetically. I see. Well, I half expected as much. Creating a substitute for them is already good since it'll allow them to leave the city without worry of disappearing. Misu nodded her head. She couldn't hide her disappointment in not being able to help them out, but is hopeful of what could happen in the future, as Shiro did mention that she'll try find a solution in the future. Once we've visited all of the cities, go to the Medic Guild and look for Sylvia. She's been researching into the solution for a while now, so if you help, we'll be able to find a solution faster. Shiro smiled as Misu paused before nodding her head. Once everyone was separated into two groups, Shiro stepped forward and activated her skill. Suddenly, two Tier 6 magic circles appeared around the group as golden energy radiated from their bodies. Scanning all of them and registering them into the magic circle, Shiro clasped her hand together and activated her spell, implanting a strange of her divine energy into their body. She wanted as their bodies reverted to their damaged forms, revealing how much Misu had to replace, as some of them didn't even have a full head. Flesh and bone started to regrow as their discoloration and sunken eyes disappeared. Once the spell was over, they looked at their body and felt emotional. They were fully prepared to live their life out as undead and didn't expect to get another chance like this. Ending the spell for now, Shiro checked how much divine energy she had left. Making a quick estimate, she figured that she'll probably be able to get through all of the cities today unless they have more people than expected.